they take me to the room where my parents are going to be waiting. I open the door and I step inside, and it's my trafficker in the room, not my parents. And to this day, I don't know how that happened. In DuPont Circle, a young woman approached me and she said she wanted to help me, and she understood how I felt. And I went back with her to her apartment, and sadly, her trafficker was there. I never had my first dance. I never had my first innocent kiss. I never went to high school because I was 12 years old when I left home. But I did have an 85-year-old man die on top of me when I was 16 years old.
Barbara Amaya ran away from home at age 12 after being abused by family members. On the streets of Washington, D.C., she was sold for human trafficking by a couple who appeared nice. After this tragic incident, she was then sold to a man who took her to New York for many years. Altogether, she was human trafficked for 10 years. Today, she fights for other victims of human trafficking and to charge policies that treat victims as criminals. The kind of response we should take to Barbara Amaya's experience to human trafficking is to take action to prevent it from occurring. It can be as simple as starting a club or community group. With a community group, we can spread the word to promote awareness and take action. Another kind of response is fundraising. An event can be held to raise money and for an international anti-trafficking organization. Lastly, we can avoid products and companies that facilitate human trafficking. Many companies like to use forced labor to make the most profit of their product. Together, we can make a difference one step at a time.
Human trafficking sounds as though it should be a problem we address in other areas of the world that are more war-torn and less free. But it is a very real problem for thousands of Americans today. Every year, thousands of men, women, and children are trafficked into and around the U.S. for the purpose of commercial sexual exploitation, labor, and debt bondage. Congress defines these severe forms of human trafficking as a situation in which a commercial sex act is induced by force, fraud, or coercion, or in which the person induced to perform such an act has not attained 18 years of age. It can also be known as the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, or obtaining of a person for labor or services through the use of force, fraud, or coercion, for the purpose of subjection to involuntary servitude, peonage, debt bondage, or slavery. Some of the major hubs for human trafficking are familiar names: California, Texas, and New York. This presents several ethical issues our country needs to address, such as modern slavery, social responsibility, justice, and human rights. Possible responses to this problem can include learning the indicators of human trafficking so you can identify and report a potential victim. Once you identify a possible trafficking victim, you can report it by contacting 911 or calling the 24-hour National Human Trafficking Hotline at 1-800-373-7888. You can also be a conscientious consumer and start asking questions as to who sews your clothing or farms your vegetables. We will explore more ways for all Americans to assist in ending this moral crisis. As Christians, we turn to Scripture for moral guidance, and the situation is no different. Although this seems to be a very modern issue to many, there are two relevant passages we'd like to highlight in the Bible. The first is Proverbs 31, verse 8 through 9. Open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all who are destitute. Open your mouth, judge righteously, defend the rights of the poor and needy. Proverbs is a book of wisdom and gives us directions on how to lead our lives in the best way on earth. This is important because it directly mentions the mute and destitute or needy, referring to those who feel powerless or cannot improve their situation without our help. This can be applied to victims of trafficking because they may feel as if they have no voice and cannot help themselves out of their own situation. We have the obligation to help the needy and defend their rights. We can accomplish this by contacting our state and federal governments in order to defend the rights of all trafficking victims and to help them in any way possible through fundraisers or volunteering at other applicable organizations.
The second passage is from 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 3 through 7. For this is the will of God, your sanctification, that you abstain from sexual immorality, that each one of you know how to control his own body in holiness and honor, not in the passion of lust like the Gentiles who do not know God. Let no one transgress and wrong his brother in this matter, because the Lord is an avenger in all these things, as we told you beforehand and solemnly warned you, for God has not called us for impurity, but in holiness. This book of law, written by St. Paul, also defines how we should or should not live our lives. The passage speaks about rape, which is a very prevalent question in human trafficking issue. It condemns this activity severely and serves a clear direction that the church must follow. Rape is wrong. We must punish those who commit this crime.
We can also use the church tradition to guide our moral compass in this situation. Saint Josephine Bakhita was a former slave whose labor and body was exploited. Around the age of 7 and 9, she was kidnapped by sex traders. Later, her captors gave her the name of Bakhita. After being kidnapped, she was sold multiple times and was treated inhumanly. It is said that she escaped once, but later on was captured again and was subsequently sold. Although things changed when she was sold to a man named Augusto Micheli in 1883, where she worked as a nanny for the children in the family. Being sold gave her the opportunity to begin a Catholic education, where later on she joined a Catholic church, in which she was given the name of Josephine. After a while, the family she was with tried to sell her again, but the Italian court denied it because slavery is illegal in Italy, so she was let free. 3 years later, after joining the Catholic Church, she became a nun for the rest of her life. Lastly, she died on February 8th, 1947 at the age of 78. We can take St. Josephine's situation and apply it to martyr victims seeking help. Like Augusto, we need to give them the ability to find quality education and new opportunities, and we need to welcome them into the church as equals despite their experiences.
We can also use reasoning to understand why human trafficking is wrong and how to respond to it. Human trafficking goes against natural law because it is our nature for human beings to exercise free will, and human trafficking robs a person of that right. It also violates several United States laws, including those against slavery, torture, and rape. The conditions many people are held in during the trafficking process are inhumane and unsanitary.
Our response to modern issue of human trafficking as a Christian issue is simply that it is wrong. The practice is morally incorrect because it violates directions given to us by the Bible, our tradition, and the laws of our country. Throughout the experiences of others, we can understand the horrors of this terrible practice and learn how to respond in order to help victims. In order to help end this crime, we can take action in our government, aid organizations that help victims, and learn how to identify victims in order to help them.